Hello, hello! Welcome to Missy's Imaginings. Today we're going to be putting together the zigzag coat for the MSD size BJDs and other similar sized fashion dolls. The pattern pieces look like this. They have a zigzag front and a zigzag front facing, a collar piece. Then we also have some zigzag design on the sleeves, so we'll have a two-piece sleeve, and then we've got another front facing, then we've got the front of the other side, the other piece of the sleeve, and then the back will be have a split tail. And then I did forget to put a back facing in the pattern set. Let's see if we can get that to show. So if you want a back facing like this, they're really simple to do. What you're gonna, let me grab my pen here. If you take a piece of paper and fold it, and let's see, should we grab one out of here? I don't know if this will be a good size, but it'll show the method at least. So if you want to add a back facing, if you get a piece of paper and fold it in half and line it up, not on the edge of the fabric, but on the seam line, and draw up to here. There we go. And then I know where my center is because that's where my fold is. So it's going to be a line right here. And then just trace around the neckline and the shoulder on the cut line. And then again, our line here is on the actual seam line. Then you're just going to come down from the shoulder and kind of make a rounded edge like so. Then all you have to do is fold it this way and cut it out. And there you have a back facing to go inside the jacket. So I forgot to add it on there, but I wanted to show if you want that piece, that's the easiest way to make a back facing. So what I'm going to do on this one, as you probably saw already in the thumbnail, is I want to do a two-tone jacket with two colors. So the zigzag piece on the front will be white, and then the zigzag piece on the sleeves will be white, and the rest of the jacket will be red. So I'll go ahead and cut out my fabrics and then we'll start sewing. Here are the pieces cut out. So I have the two pieces of the front. I will mention that when you cut out the pieces, for the two front pieces that are the zigzag design, the front and the front facing, be sure that you lay the patterns on the right side of the fabric, because this is going to be this side of the jacket. And then when you make the facing and you put it together, you want the good side of the fabric to be on the inside of the jacket, because then when you open that, that's what shows. So you just want to make sure that those are laid on the right side of the fabric, and you'll cut one of each of those. Likewise, when you cut the other front, you want to have those, and they probably won't matter as much if you're using just a one-sided fabric like I am, but at the same token, you would want both of those to lay on the right side of the fabric like this, so that once you put them together, then you've got your right sides together. So when the jacket is done, let's see, we'll line that up, then it's going to look like this. So that's going to be the front of our jacket. What I'm going to do is first I'm going to work on the sleeves, because the sleeves will have the zigzag overlap as well. So I have my red pieces here, and they will overlap onto the red as well, like this. So because these two pieces don't have an actual pointed part that sticks out, on the zigzag part of the sleeves, I'm going to sew down where the seam, if I were to sew pieces together, the seam line would be. I'm going to sew that so it will give me a thread line against which I can fold my fabric in like this, and I can press that so that it will give me a nice folded edge all along the zigzag, and then I'll lay it onto the red and then just top stitch it down. And so the red, like this seam allowance, is folded like a 1/4 inch. Then I'll overlap this so that the edge of that seam allowance matches the edge of the red fabric, and it will also help so that that seam allowance will help to block the red from showing through the white, because see, it's kind of see-through, and so the seam allowance kind of has a dual purpose in that it gives the nice folded edge like this, but then it also gives that portion to overlap your other color so that this just looks white and it doesn't look red through there. So we'll run this through the machine. Let's see here, and it doesn't need to be back tacked or anything, because like I say, this is just going to be a line that can be used to fold. So we're going to come down just where the seam allowance would be, and then, oh yeah, we'll go ahead and pivot. And if you're new to sewing, when you're going to pivot something, you always want your needle to be sunk down into the machine so that your pivot is actually on the needle. Get one more stitch there. There we go. And come down here. And then down to the bottom. Alright, we'll pull this out. Trim away what we don't need. Alright, now what I'm also going to do is, because I'm going to be folding this in and this would separate, I'm going to be snipping pretty much to that thread in the corners that go in, and then also on the corners that go out I'm going to snip the tip off like that, and then I'm going to cut to the tip like this, so that when I fold those in, and then I might need to go ahead and snip that one down, I can turn that and fold on that thread line to have a nice point right there when I go to top stitch it and press it in place. But if you have too much bulk, then this gets really lumpy. So I trim away that tip part, and then when you fold one side in, here, we'll try this again, then you're going to have a little bit sticking out. Just let that fold, and then fold it down. And because we've trimmed away some of that fabric, then this is nice and tight. And then this would turn in here. So now I'm going to do the other one. I'm going to press this right on the edge of that thread, and then I will lay it onto the red fabric and top stitch it on. Here I have one of the folded pieces that's all pressed, and I have my white edge lined up with the red and the pin down here. So I'm going to go ahead into my machine, and I'm going to make sure that my needle is sinking very, very close to the edge of that white fabric. There we go. And I'm going to hold on to this so I can kind of help it get started through there. So I'm going to be stitching very, very close to the edge of the white. Come down and I forgot to hit the sink on my needle. There. Oh, there. Now I got the sink on there. So we'll keep going down to this edge. And again, we're going to sink the needle before we pivot the machine to give a nice crisp corner turn. And if I can get my foot to stay up, I have my tweezers just so I can make sure and pull this corner tight. There we go. Sometimes it's hard to get fingers in that tight, so I use my little tweezers. Okay. We'll do one more stitch. Gets us closer to the edge that we want. I'll pull my pin out so I can have it out of the way. And come down to the bottom. And this is going to be serged and then hemmed, so I'm not going to worry about the seam there. So now I have this piece all put together, and I did the same on the other one. And then on the back side, I went ahead and opened up the seam allowance and folded my sleeve parts away so that I could serge that edge combination of the white and red, just so that I have a finished edge on the inside as well. Whether or not you top stitch again a straight line to help hold this down is totally up to you. I'm not going to do that, but you certainly could. Well, we could, I guess, just for the sake of example, I suppose. Now that I have that serge, so I know my fabric is finished, then you can also put this back in here to the machine, and let's see if we can get it started. And I'm lining up the white edge just with the inside opening of my foot there, just to kind of keep my line straight. And then I'm going to go straight down. I'm not following the zigzag here. I'm just coming straight down. And doing that, just it adds that one extra line of top stitching, and it helps keep this together so that this will be less likely to fold open and cause unnecessary wrinkles. So that's always something else that you can do. So we'll go ahead and, since we did on that one, we'll go ahead and add that on this side as well. So we'll come straight down. So it's just an option, and it's just, like I say, keeping that seam allowance in place so that it behaves. There we go. We'll trim away the excess thread we don't need. And so now these sleeves are ready to be treated just like a single piece of fabric. So I think for me, that's the fun of color blocking, is you can make different shapes and put them together, and then you've just got a sleeve that just has more interest to my mind. So now I will be basting along the top edge of these sleeves with 2 lines of basting stitches. Not necessarily because this sleeve will have a lot of pucker, but when it's gathered slightly, and then even if you ungather it, so you pull those threads tight and then you kind of loosen it to where it's almost flat, it still has enough of a curvature that it makes it easier to inset the sleeves. I will also be serging the bottom edge and then just turning it up to hem. So now my next step is going to be a little different. First, I will be sewing the shoulders of the facing together. Let me get the collar out of the way. And I want to make sure that I have the right side of the fabric toward this, so that this is the inside of my fabric. So I will be putting this together at the shoulder with this together at the shoulder. So that will be done. Then I will be serging along the back center edge, because the back center is going to have a slight opening. So once I serge both of these pieces of fabric, I will sew from the neckline down to about here. Then that will be open, and the seam allowance will be pressed, and then we will have a slight opening at the bottom of the jacket. So I'm not going to sew all the way down. Then when I have the back put together, I will go ahead and with the right side of my fabric to the right side of the back, I will put it together at the shoulders, like so. And then the collar will be sewn around the top edge, and then it will be trimmed closely, and then flipped right side out. And then when I'm ready to place the collar into the garment, I'll come back to the camera. So I have a little bit of prep work to do. Also, once the facing is put together, it will have a shape like this. Let's see if that will show. Okay. And I'm going to be serging all the way around the facing, because that edge will be free inside the garment, and I want that edge of fabric to be finished. I don't want it to be raw fabric. So I will be serging the edge of that. And yeah, so that's my work that I need to do still, and then I'll come back to the camera. Here is the facing all ready. So it's sewn together at the shoulders and serged all the way around the edges. Then I have the sleeves gathered here. I do need to still hem the ends, but I do have these gathered and kind of puckered so that they'll be easier to put in. And I have the back sewn together, and then I have the shoulders applied. So now when I put in the collar, most of the time doing a collar, if you've watched other videos, we match the center back and then work our way around to the front. But this time, because the front is going to overlap, they're not going to meet, I'm going to actually start my collar on the edge that is not zigzagged, and I'm going to start about a 1/4 inch away from the edge of the raw edge of the fabric, because remember, I'm going to have a seam right here where the facing will be, and I want the collar to be right about at the edge. So I'm going to start about a 1/4 inch in from the raw fabric edge, and then I'm going to pin the collar on like so, and just go all the way around like this, because this is going to overlap and the collar is going to kind of wrap around that way. So the collar is going to start at the raw, the straight edge, and then just follow the line around. And the seam allowances on the actual garment will all be open except for the back, because the back seam is laying one direction, so that when this fold comes down for the part that opens, then the seam allowance goes under that rather than having just a gap. So I want the seam allowance to go under that little flap so that it does have backing behind that flap, but the other shoulder seam allowances will be open when I pin the collar on. Then once I get the collar in place, I'm going to sew it on very, very close to the edge, not taking the full seam allowance, but only about the same 1/8 of an inch that I did around the edge of the collar. I'm also going to snip the collar edge like so, just up to the stitching, and that just kind of makes it easier to maneuver around corners. I'm also going to be snipping here, not quite in a 1/4 of an inch, just around those curves, because this will make the garment easier to place the collar in, because it's really round right now. So when you snip those, it makes it easier to kind of fool your machine into thinking you're just sewing a straight line rather than a curve, and it opens out these little tabs and gives space so that that can more easily get your collar fit in there. So I'm just going to snip around the edges There we go. And they're about 1/4 of an inch apart. And I'm also snipping kind of next to where my seams are on the shoulders, just because that's a really sharp corner, and I want to be able to open up a little bit more so I can get that collar to fit in there better. So there we go. So we just kind of snip that, and then it just makes it easier when we go to pin the collar in to open that up and feed it through the machine. Once I get the collar attached, then it will be more secure, and I will snip around the edges of the neckline of the facing, and then the collar will end up being sandwiched between the right sides of the garment and the right sides of the facing. So the facing will go on like this, so that what you see before you turn it is the raw and wrong edge, and then the good side of the fabrics will be together with that collar sandwiched in between there. And then we'll sew from the edges of the facing, just sew along the bottom, and then up the front, around the neckline, across all those zigzags, down the bottom, and then across the bottom of the facing. And then we'll come back to the camera. Now that the collar is in between the garment and the facing, I'm going to go ahead and trim away the front edge of the seam allowance by the edge of the zigzag. So I'm just trimming even closer than 1/8 of an inch inside or next to the stitching, so that I'll be able to turn that. And so I'm going to snip real close to what I sewed, being careful not to cut the threads because you don't want it to come apart. When I come up here at the top, I'm going to be right close to the tip edge of those threads, and I'm just going to go straight up. Then I'm going to trim the tips real close to the thread, but again, be careful not to cut any of your thread. There we go. Then inside the zigzag, I'm going to snip inside those angles to the thread, as close as you can get, but be very, very careful on all of those little inside edges. There we go. And then on the top, I'm going to trim kind of right next to the stitching, but kind of at an angle, because I don't want to trim all of my neck edge, but I just want as little as possible on the edge of that tip. So now we can flip this, and all these little points are going to be coming out. So I'm going to use my tweezers to come in here and poke out the tip. So this one I might have to use the tweezer and then push it out like so. There we go. It's coming out. And then we'll get these to come out, and you want to be careful because you don't want to poke holes in your fabric, so you do want to be careful. But if you trim real close, then that helps to lessen the bulk and make those points look better. And then this edge on the very corner, I'm just going to fold that up towards the garment and then flip that, and then take my corner out there. Okay, so that's going to be this edge. There we go. We're getting that all in there and getting those edges kind of clean for nice little points there. There we go. So here's the front. Then we can take a look here. And I did decide to go with, some of it has red thread and some has white, because I didn't want any red showing on the white threads. So there is a little bit of white that'll peek through here, but there's no pleats. So we're going to pull our collar out on this edge as well, and then fold this edge up and around to make a crisp little corner there. And take my tweezers there. Alright, so now we have the facing in, the collar on. I've got a little stray thread here. We'll trim that off. And there we go. There is the front of our jacket with the stand-up collar, and the collar overlaps there. So that's the front of our jacket. So now I'm going to use my little tweezers just to get this kind of settled down so I can get it as pointed as possible and flat as possible. And I am going to top stitch along the zigzag edge just to help that to lay down a little bit more. So it'll look like so. And I'm just going to come straight down. I'm not going to do a cross because then that will be taken care of when I actually hem the garment. But this is what the front of the jacket looks like so far. Now we need to go ahead and put in the sleeves. And so I want to make sure that the white part of the sleeve goes towards the front. So I'm going to do the one first where I actually match the white side to white to make sure that I get the sleeves on correctly. So then this one will go on like this. But I always start with the outside edge of a sleeve. So take this red and I'll start pinning from this outside edge and do a couple pins. I might as well just do it now, right? So I match up my corner edge and put a little pin in. And I kind of straighten this out as I go because again, I'm not trying to have any gathers. I just want that ease stitching on the curves to make it fit together a little bit better. So I'm kind of straightening that out as I work towards the center. Then I'll come to this other side of the sleeve. If I can get the thread out of the way. And the other side of the armhole. So then I'll match that edge and put a pin here. There we go, and one more. And I'll just continue working my way towards the center. So that way, if there is any excess in the sleeve, it's all up at the top of the shoulder, because you don't want gathers down by the lower part of the back of the sleeve where it connects to the side. You don't want gathers and pleats under the armpit. You always want those excess little puckers to be up at the top where the shoulder actually needs the room. So we're going to move that, and then we're going to make sure that the center of the sleeve matches up with the top of the shoulder. And I gotta, there we go, my finger was kind of in the way. So I'm gonna make sure that that matches up so that my sleeve, there we go, is centered correctly. And then if there's any other gathers, they'll gather up to this pin on either side. But that way I know that the actual center of the sleeve and the center of the shoulder will be all matched up. And I've got a couple little puckers there that we're going to have up at the top, so I'm smoothing that out as much as I can. Put a pin here so that it keeps those puckers towards the center top, And then one more here. And there we go. And that's how I insert the sleeve. So now when I sew the sleeve, because this has some gathers that are kind of puckery, I'm going to put that side down to the feed dogs, because the feed dogs that are underneath the foot help to feed that gathering through the machine. And also that way, when I'm looking at this part of the garment, I'm looking at the actual front and back of the garment. I can make sure that I don't get any wrinkles or pleats in this part. And the trick is, as you're sewing this, to really be careful that you're only taking that 1/4 inch seam allowance, because if you try to go too deep, then there's too much fabric and you end up with wrinkles or pleats. So the key is to keep it just at the actual seam line where the seam allowance is supposed to be. And then that helps to make sure that there's plenty of room for your seam, everything fits together, but you don't have any unnecessary pleats. And you can kind of tell, because I try to pin so that my pin goes back into the garment right on that edge. And you can see if I sew right along that line, it's above where any folds in the fabric lie, because there's no folds up here, but they come down below. So I want to keep my seam above where any of this fabric would fold, so that way once it's sewn, my thread is not creating any pleats, and then this will be able to lay more flat. So that's what I'm going to do next, is sew this in and put in the sleeve, and then I'll do the other side as well. So sorry, I forgot to show that I turned the garment so that right sides were together, and then I sewed from the hem of the sleeves up to the armpit, and then down the sides to the hem of the jacket to finish putting it together. Then I went ahead and did the hem, so then the hem was done. And now we'll go ahead and take a look at it. And here is our finished little jacket. So I went ahead and put the snaps where the little indentations are under the roses. So there's 4 snaps here, and then I also have a little snap here, just at the halfway between the rose and the end, so right about there. So then here's how the color overlaps in the front, and then on the sleeves I went ahead and just, I don't know, embellished it with a little sequin and a bead, just to make it a little bit more fun, to have a little bit of sparkle there. So this is how the little jacket ends up being put together. This is a 1/4 scale version pattern. So what I wanted to do is to put this together exactly as the pattern is on the website, so you would see what it looks like and how it turns out. Here's the back and the little flap. So the choices as to what color threads are going to show will be entirely up to you and what color fabrics you use. And so it was kind of hard to decide, because I knew I didn't want a lot of thread colors showing, so I may even still take this stitching out and then stitch it with red. I'm not sure, but I might do that. There is some white that shows on the edges of the sleeves, and since they're put together, I couldn't fix that, but I may end up fixing this so that I don't have any white showing here. But anyway, that's how it fits, or how it turns out. So what I want to do is to try it on a couple dolls, and we'll take a look at how it fits various 1/4 scale dolls. Now the other thing on this pattern, it is reduced from the 3rd scale size, and it was reduced to 70% of the actual SD size. So when you're using that pattern, if you like this size, this is what the pattern will produce. If you want it a little bigger, you could enlarge those pieces a little bit and give them an extra 10% bigger if you want it a little bit larger to fit a particular doll. But we'll go ahead and grab some of mine and put them on and see how they fit. Here is the completed outfit on a Tonner matte body style, and in my opinion the coat is too small. I could get it on and I could get it snapped, but it is very tight through the chest and the shoulders for this doll. The pants, however, fit perfect. They are a perfect fit. They're a little long, but they're a perfect fit for this doll, and it's kind of like he's on the stand, so it's a little crunched. And see how it pulls in the back, because the girth of this doll is too big for the pattern. Even though the pant length and the pants fit really well, the coat, the length is okay. It could be longer. The sleeves could be just a little bit longer, but it is definitely too tight across the chest. You would want to widen the torso pieces just a bit. It wouldn't take a lot, in my opinion, but just a bit. And I would broaden the shoulders, bring the shoulders out a little bit for this doll. So that's the Tonner matte body style, and that's what the outfit looks like on him. I didn't show sewing the pants just because I have several videos on doing the pants, and it's just a double pleated pant style. So here, we'll take him off the stand. There we go. And let's see here, undo this so we can get a look at the pants. We got some chalk stuff on it. So it's just a double pleated pant, and I'm not sure if the lighting will get that very well, but so that's 2 pleats on each side, and then inset pockets in the front, and I added some very small darts to fit at the waistband, just so it would fit a little bit better. But his pants fit really well on the Tonner style, but the jacket is very, very snug, but it will go on him, but it's just very, very snug. So there's the Tonner matte guy. So now we'll take a look at this outfit on another doll. Next up is the Miro doll quarter scale body. It's the newer body, my Leo here, and the jacket definitely fits this guy much better. It's not pulled so tight across his chest, so it's much looser here. There's actually some give there, and then the pants are a good length for this fella as well. And so all in all, this quarter scale guy fits the outfit very well. I had his pants caught kind of on his shoe there, so we'll swing around. There is still a little bit of room where if it was a little wider at the bottom, it wouldn't pull so much here. So that's a little bit small on this side, but it could just be the girth of the pants as well. But it looks pretty good on this guy. It fits him really well, and I'm very happy with how it fits him. Again, I think I just need to make the shoulders a little bit wider. But all in all, I think it's a good fit for this guy. And I'll probably, if I make it again for this guy, I probably would add a little more width in the shoulders and just a little more width at the hip. This, I guess aesthetically there could be more room, but it's not really necessary in here. But if you widen the shoulders, it might end up getting a little wider in here as well, which wouldn't hurt anything. So there's the little jacket and pants on the Miro doll Leo with the newer quarter scale body. Lastly, we have the 39 centimeter BJD gravity quarter scale fella. He's quite a bit smaller than the other two, as you can tell, because his feet don't even go to the bottom of the stand, but this is the one I had handy. So the pants are really, really long on him, and for this pattern they would definitely need to be shortened, and they were too big around the waist. They're quite a bit bigger because this guy is a lot smaller than the others, but the coat fits him really well. So I like how the coat fits, and here it's kind of hooked up on the stand there, and we got thread going on, but the back of the jacket has plenty of room, and the elbows look good with the length there. It doesn't, if we bend his arm, it doesn't have the length creep up, so he's really wobbly on this stand. But the jacket fits this guy really, really well, and he will probably remain in this jacket just because I like it on him. So it does fit him the best. I put the measurements up by each guy, so if you want to rewind a little bit and look at measurements, you can kind of see how the measurements of these fellas might compare to whatever doll you might be sewing for and want to fit to. So that way you'll kind of have an idea of how the outfit is as it comes out. If you print it out, this is what you're going to get, and then how it fits these three type of dolls. These are the only 3/4 scale fellas that I have, and so hopefully the variety in their sizes will be helpful for you to judge how you want to use the pattern. But there it is. That's how we put it together and how it looks. So enjoy, and until next time, happy sewing.